A teenage boy awakens inside an ascending elevator, called the box, gasping and coughing, and confused about where he is. When he reaches the top, he is greeted by a group of young men who call him Greenie. After Gally pulls him out of the elevator, he runs away from them, making them think that they got a runner. He trips, which draws laughter, and he is stunned upon seeing the place he's in, a vast grass area enclosed by gigantic stone walls called the Glade. After Albie, the Glader's leader, tells Greenie not to run again, he asks him about who he is, but he has no memory of his identity. Albie tells him to relax as it happens to all of them, and he assures him that he'll remember his name in a few days as they're allowed to keep it. Albie shows Greenie around and tells him that the box provides whatever they need, and they work with what they're given. Once a month, the box sends fresh supplies and the newest addition to the Glade, called Green Bean or Greenie. When Greenie asks who sends them to the Glade, Albie tells him that he doesn't know. After Greenie meets Newt, Albie's second-in-command, he inquires about the alley section of the wall. Albie explains that the Glade has 3 fundamental rules. Firstly, do your part. Secondly, never harm another Glader. And lastly, never go beyond the walls. While tying up a hammock, Chuck tells Greenie that it starts the same for everyone. They wake up in the box, Albie gives the tour, and then they live in the Glade. To his horror, when he turns around, Greenie is already walking towards the alley. Chuck runs after him and reminds him not to go beyond the walls. Shortly after, they see Ben and Minho exit the alley. Chuck then clarifies that everyone is prohibited from going beyond the walls, except for the runners, who know more about the maze, which feeds Greenie's curiosity even more. Gally stops him by pushing him to the ground, grabbing everyone's attention, and he demands to know why they won't tell him what's out there. They are then interrupted by the alley closing. At a bonfire later that night, Newt informs Greenie that the alley he is so keen on exploring is the entrance to a dangerous maze that surrounds the Glade. When the doors open every morning, the runners run to the maze, mapping and memorizing it to find an exit. Easier said than done, they've been searching for an exit for 3 years already, since the maze changes every night. Newt adds that the runners are the strongest and fastest of them all. If they fail to return before the doors close at sundown, they will be stuck in the maze and will turn into grievers, which they haven't seen yet as no one has lived to tell the tale. Telling Greenie more about the Glader's assigned tasks, Newt says Winston is the keeper of the slicers, and Medjacks, Clint, and Jeff spend most of their time bandaging up the slicers. When Greenie asks about wanting to be a runner, Newt tells him that runners are chosen. The Gladers cheer on Greenie to fight Gally. While they fight, Greenie falls on his head and remembers that his name is Thomas. He tells everyone his name and they celebrate. When they are interrupted by a loud, horrifying sound, Thomas asks what it is and Gally tells him that it's a griever. Thomas dreams of a girl calling his name and telling him everything is going to change. An older lady saying, "Wicked is good," and faces staring at him. When he wakes up, Albie brings him to a wall with the Glader's names, and he carves his name on it. When Thomas goes to the woods to get some fertilizer, a delirious Ben suddenly attacks him, telling him that he saw him and that it's his fault. Thomas runs back to the Gladers, screaming for help, and the Gladers pin Ben down. Upon lifting Ben's shirt, the Gladers discover that Ben was stung by a griever, which usually appears after dark. Albie then orders the Gladers to put Ben in the pit. When Thomas asks Albie what happened to Ben, Albie tells him that a stung Glader undergoes a phase called the changing. After a confused Thomas tells Albie about what Ben said to him, he asks how their situation can be his fault. Despite Ben's plea, the Gladers force him into the maze and he screams in fear as the walls close. Later that night, Gally scratches Ben's name off the wall. Thomas is once again awakened by the same dream. He then sees Albie and Minho, keeper of the runners, entering the maze. When he brings this up to Newt, Newt tells him that Albie knows better than the rest of them as he was the first one to arrive in the Glade. The Gladers later gather at the entrance, anxiously waiting for Albie and Minho to return. Thomas suggests sending someone after the pair, but Gally tells him that it's against the rules. When Minho appears dragging a stung Albie, Gally tells Minho that he needs to leave him. Thomas runs into the maze to help, seconds before the entrance closes, and all 3 of them get trapped in the maze. Refusing to leave Albie, Thomas suggests hiding him in the plants. When a griever appears, Minho runs for his life, leaving Thomas and Albie. The griever chases Thomas, whom Minho later finds, and Minho leads him into a closing passageway. While Minho is already safe on the other side, Thomas waits for the griever to appear, and he lures it into the closing passageway, causing it to get crushed. The next day, the trio returns to the Glade, shocking the Gladers. When Chuck asks if they saw a griever, Minho tells them that Thomas killed one. Worried that Thomas's violation might harm them, Gally suggests punishing him. However, Minho, who acknowledges the fact that Thomas risked his life to save Albie, tells everyone that they should all be more like Thomas and suggests that Thomas become a runner. As Gally objects, the box comes up even if it's not supposed to go up yet, and they find an unconscious girl with a note in her hand, saying that she is the last one to enter the Glade. The girl briefly awakens and recognizes Thomas, but he doesn't recognize her. Since Thomas insists on going back to the maze to figure out what they are really up against, Minho, Frypan, Winston, and Zart accompany him. Upon inspecting the crushed griever's corpse, they find a device in it with a blinking red light, a red 7, and a WCKD label similar to the label on their supplies. The group brings the device back to the Glade as their first real clue ever, and Thomas suggests further exploration. While Gally continues to object, Newt makes Thomas an official runner. Minho shows Thomas a model of the maze, revealing that there's nothing left to map, but Albie insisted on keeping it from everyone to keep their hopes up. He informs Thomas that when the maze changes every night, it opens a new section and the pattern stays the same. Seeing our 7 inches on the device, Minho says that Section 7 was open when they were attacked and deduces that it might be the section the griever was from. When the girl wakes up, she tells Thomas that her name is Teresa. She asks who he is as she was told that she kept saying his name in her sleep, but Thomas tells her that none of them knows who they are. When she shares what she remembers, Thomas tells her that he had the same dreams, and she was there telling him that everything's going to change. Since the others have no memories at all, they're confused as to why they do. Teresa pulls out 2 syringes with an unknown substance in them and a WCKD label on them from her pocket. Thomas hands the syringes to Newt, suggesting they try injecting Albie with it since he's dying anyway. Newt allows it, and the delirious Albie falls unconscious. Thomas and Minho return to the maze with the device, and Minho is puzzled as to why Section 7 is already open. The device starts clicking and beeping, leading the pair to a place Minho hasn't seen before. Just when they thought they reached another dead end, the red light and number on the device turn green and several doors open. The pair explore the possible exit, and Minho finds a trace of grievers. After a red laser scans them, an alarm blares, forcing the pair to immediately leave. The pair evades several traps, barely making it out alive. After the pair reports what they've discovered to Newt and the rest of the Gladers, a confrontation erupts between Gally and Thomas about its possible consequences. Teresa interrupts them, saying Albie has recovered. Thomas informs Albie of what they've discovered, but Albie tells them that they can't leave and tearfully asks Thomas why he did it and why he came. They then hear a commotion outside, and they find other Gladers frightened and on high alert as the maze entrance is not closing. When the other doors start opening, orders are immediately given out to ensure their safety. To their horror, grievers rapidly move towards the Glade, snatching every Glader they spot, including Albie, who saved Chuck. A furious Gally blames Thomas for everything, assuming that Thomas is one of the people who put them in the Glade and was sent there to destroy everything they built. Thinking Gally might be right, Thomas stabs himself with a severed griever stinger in an attempt to regain his memories. Saved by the last anti-venom, Thomas awakens the next day and reveals to Teresa, Newt, Minho, and Chuck what he remembered while he was unconscious. The Glade is a test and the creators were experimenting on them before they disappeared. He adds that he and Teresa worked with the creators, which Teresa refuses to believe. Newt urges Thomas to continue so Albie's death won't be for nothing. Gally, who has taken control of the Glade, sacrifices Thomas and Teresa as offerings to the grievers in an attempt to restore peace. After Thomas's team overpowers Gally's, they convince the others to join them, but Gally and a few others refuse to leave. As Chuck and Teresa attempt to access the possible exit, the rest of the Gladers fight off grievers. When the exit asks for an 8-digit code, Thomas asks Minho the sequence of the sections of the maze and they successfully access the exit, but lost a few Gladers, including Jeff, who saved Minho. The Gladers reach a laboratory littered with corpses, and they discover that they were monitored the entire time. When Thomas presses a button, a video of the Director of Operations of the World Catastrophe Kill Zone Department, Dr. Ava Page, plays. In the video, she informs them that watching the video means that they have successfully completed the maze trials. She adds that they are important as they are part of an experiment intended to develop a cure for a deadly virus that attacks the brain, called the flare, which came after the planet was hit by a devastating solar flare. As Ava is calmly leaving a message for the Gladers, the scientists behind her are shot by armed forces. She then shoots herself after telling the Gladers to remember that wicked is good. A door opens as they approach Ava's corpse, but before they can leave the laboratory, a stung Gally appears with a gun, telling them that they can't leave. Gally shoots at Thomas and Minho eliminates him with a spear. Chuck, who took the bullet for Thomas, gives Thomas the figurine he intended to give his parents before taking his last breath. Masked armed forces then take the Gladers to a helicopter, dragging a grieving Thomas away from Chuck. Aboard the helicopter, they're told that they're now safe and that everything is going to change. The Gladers see the entirety of the maze for the first time, and they discover that it's in the middle of a vast desert. Unbeknownst to the Gladers, the supposedly dead Ava meets with the other supposedly dead scientists, telling them that the maze trials have been successful. Although she wasn't expecting many survivors, she is impressed with Thomas and hopes that they could be the key to everything. After noting that the Gladers seem to have taken the bait, she declares that they are now entering Phase 2. Meanwhile, the helicopter flies towards a ruined city.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.